Well, let me introduce my guest who is here with me this morning to help us celebrate a very special milestone for the San Juan Regional Medical Center Auxiliary. Teresa Becker is here, the volunteer manager. Good morning and welcome back to KSJE. Good to have you here.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Great to have you here. As I mentioned, a big anniversary, right? A big milestone for volunteers.
Yes, we're very excited. The auxiliary was founded in 1952, so they're 70 years old this year. We're still trying to pin down the exact date to see if we can have some fun there, but that's been a little elusive.
Interesting, but we do know it was that 1952 year. At some point during that 12 months, the auxiliary was formed. So good to know. And that was right in the kind of midst of the big boom time in Farmington, correct? As the town was really exploding in growth. And so it makes sense that there be a lot of these type of support organizations that were brought online during those times to contribute to the community, the fast growing community.
Definitely. And just from the history that I've seen, the community was awesome about coming in, and the women of the time just really band together, and a lot of doctors' wives and just, as I said, community members came about and did all kinds of projects for the hospital, fundraising, and sewed linens and curtains and all kinds of things.
All that stuff. So interesting. Very, very cool. And so talk to me a little bit about maybe some of the other things that you've got planned. I know you brought some scrapbooks with you too, right? Because somebody was keeping track of some of these things, right?
Yes,
over these years.
We have a little show and tell today. The amount of scrapbooks that I've gathered up, and there's probably many, many more out there, they did an amazing job of capturing just whatever the features and highlights were of the time.
Right.
Some years were more productive than others, but I've got probably 40 scrapbooks, and we've been going through them, just showing that rich history and all the fun things. Lots of teen volunteers that are now employees there. So
wow.
It's kind of a blast from the past.
Right. Very
lots
true.
Lots of fun things to see.
That would be cool to see again. And again, say what you will about print media, but without it, we wouldn't have many of these clippings, right? That ended up in your scrapbooks, right, from the daily newspaper of the time.
Right. A lot of history just about the hospital in general as well. And I suppose marketing's got their own versions of all of that, but we've been having a lot of fun going through that. And then we're just trying to hit the highlights and feature that, send that out to the auxiliary, and kind of have an ongoing sharing of some of those events, and just letting them see what happened and then progress up to where we're at.
Right.
Now.
How have things changed? Have you been able to determine kind of from the very early beginnings of how things have changed? Because I know now your volunteers do a whole lot of jobs in and around the hospital and the gift market and things along that line. Do you know kind of what it was like to be a volunteer at the hospital in 1952?
It's really interesting. It's in some ways it's very similar to what we do today. I've seen some instances where they were doing things we wouldn't dream of having volunteers do today, but it was probably out of necessity.
Sure.
Feeding patients.
More like health-related things
that.
maybe. Okay.
I think kind of bordering on what CNAs or unit secretaries would do nowadays. So it's, paid, licensed, certified people doing those kinds of things, but they just may not have had those resources. So people stepped up and made it happen.
Right.
But otherwise, a lot of the same things. The teen volunteer at the time, of course, they call them candy stripers, which kind of lean to girls being
true at that time. That's right.
Being involved. We call them just teen volunteers now, so the boys can feel comfortable in that role as well. And we have several. They're just as important, and so we love having them.
And you don't make him wear pink and white striped uniforms anymore either, do you?
Not so much these days.
Okay, good, very good. And so so today, give us kind of a snapshot of the volunteer organization at the hospital. How many folks do you have volunteering? at San Juan
We
Regional?
have about 40 right now, which is certainly a lower number than we've been accustomed to over the years. That's the product of COVID, unfortunately.
Right.
We may have some additional folks return to us that have just kind of been waiting and seeing what happens with COVID, but we're certainly opening back up. We're excited about that. Some folks have health issues and they've just chosen to let this be a time to retire, which in volunteer world, when they retire, they can still go to another category called associate membership, so they can still participate in some of the events and activities, just not come in like weekly to do a service. So we're quickly adding on to that number, though, getting phone calls every day. And of course, anyone interested in coming back to volunteer now's the time. Contact us. And one caveat is that we do still require, as a hospital, we do still require that our volunteers be fully vaccinated. And so if you can fit that criteria and have the desire and want to give a few hours a week, feel free to contact me through the website, or my phone number is 505-609-6156.
Okay, and I'll have you repeat that in a little bit too for folks that are maybe looking to write that down.
Mm-hmm.
And the website, of course, is sanjuanregional.com, right?
Yes.
This is how you can find that. And so, and of course, now that maybe, knock on wood, things are calming down a little bit COVID-wise, maybe more folks are thinking about maybe coming back and doing some more of this really important volunteer work at the hospital and other places too in the community. Are you seeing that as well?
Yes, definitely. A lot of interest with our teen volunteers looking for projects and service work through the summer, and that's great. I interviewed a gal yesterday, in fact, an adult that's just here in the community and not really working now and just wants to serve in many areas. And so we're going to get her on board and get her started in our gift market, which that was the first area back last year that we brought volunteers back. It was in May. And we identified that that was going to be a pretty safe and
important area too,
role.
right, to open back up.
Yeah, if nothing else, the employees desperately were missing it. But, we didn't have a lot of the community coming through unless they had appointments. But certainly the staff stepped up and supported the gift market and has just exploded since then. So we're pretty excited about that. And so the majority of our volunteers do serve in that area right now, but we're getting back to having folks up at the information desk returning and slightly modified roles, but still very, very important.
Of course, sure. Well, and again, as policies ebb and flow and change, right? Because we know the hospitals had changed its visitation policy,
yes,
up and down a little bit and in and out and all those things as conditions changed here too. And so your volunteers had to react to that. Those changes as well. And so that's what you're talking about.
And they've been great. I want to share this. This is just tugged at my heart. I've been asking, especially our long-term volunteers that have been here a while, have been asking them to share with me their fondest memory of volunteering over the years, if they could even pinpoint one. And so Martha Wilson, she's actually been with us 40 years now this year. And so we get to
40 out of the 50, then, right?
Well, yes,
of the
40 out of the 70. 40.
Oh, it's 70. I keep thinking.
Yes,
pardon
40
me.
out of the 70.
Okay. Still impressive. Still impressive.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Yes. And she should be our poster child. But she wrote, if you don't mind me sharing.
Not at all.
In March of 2020, all auxilians were given a leave of absence from the hospital due to COVID restrictions. Then in May of 2021, after 14 months of absence, the mail service was allowed back, but only with restricted delivery sites. My first day back was greeted with surprised delight by several employees when they saw me back on the job. Quite a few went out of their way to come out of their offices and expressed their delight at having volunteers back again. Welcome back. It's so good to see you again. We missed you. We need you. Those were some of the things that were said to me on behalf of all the volunteers. It was so heartwarming to know that we are really appreciated and needed in the service we give and missed when we're not there. This shall remain one of my fondest memories in my auxiliary service, and it warms my heart every time I think of it.
Aw.
Isn't that sweet?
That? Right.
Of all the things that she could have shared, because I saw her picture a lot in all of those scrapbooks, and so,
right. For 40 years.
Yes.
She would.
Yeah. She's a go-getter and has contributed a lot. So this is very special.
Very nice. Well, and it kind of talks a little bit about how the employees really appreciate the work of the volunteers and miss them when they weren't there.
Absolutely.
Doing those jobs, and that's a good point, I think, too, is that the volunteers do save the hospital a lot of money. If they had to hire staff for some of these things that your volunteers do, that would really affect the bottom line, I would assume, of the facility, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Even through the 2 years or 14 months that they weren't able to come in, the folks that had to pick up the roles that they were doing before, we just didn't let it go. We had to still, like mail service, you can't just ignore that.
Right.
So my department actually picked up the slack, and security has helped. Just lots of folks have stepped up, so they're very appreciative to have them back.
Right, I would think so. And again, as you mentioned, there are more opportunities for volunteers now at the hospital as things are getting back more and more open, and so you have more demand and need more people in your ranks, I guess, right? In the
Absolutely.
auxiliary.
Yep.
And different jobs, right? There are different time.
Lots of opportunities. It's not just the gift market. The information desk, as I mentioned, is a big one. We are trying to reestablish some roles more in the clinical areas to help offset the work that the clinical folks do. Just comfort measures like providing pillows, for instance, for somebody, or getting them a glass of water, things that don't take a license, or we're not going to administer medication or anything like that, but we can contribute a lot. So we're trying to rebuild that role, and that's going to be a big opportunity, especially for our young folks that may have an interest in a healthcare career, and they can kind of see all the things that go on and support that.
A great way to maybe get your foot in the door, or at least see if you're truly interested in that once you actually do a little bit of that, or see it up close and personal in some cases. If you're even a volunteer at the hospital, I know you're exposed to some of these things that are going on, so that might be a good thing for a young person to try out and see if it fits.
Right. And that's the beauty of volunteering in general, especially for the teens, but they contribute a lot for us as well, but it does benefit them.
Right. Very true. So that's a great opportunity. And the time commitment, I imagine, is flexible somewhat. Yes. Also, depending on the job, right?
Right.
If someone only has X number of hours a week, you can maybe fill that in or work around that.
We used to say an average of 4 hours a week was what our volunteers would be around, and of course
seems reasonable.
Some work more. Yeah, it's definitely doable.
Right.
And so we are very flexible if they're trying to work around school schedules or other activities, and we can adjust. So come see us.
There you go. Check it out, everyone. Again, why don't you repeat that phone number again if folks would like to call you and find out more, Teresa Becker?
Yes, it's 505-609-6156.
Okay, that very good. And again, SanJuanRegional.com is the website, and you can find the volunteer tab, and probably there's a link to apply.
Community.
Okay.
Yeah, and then a link.
There you go. That would make sense. But the need is there. You said you've got about 40 volunteers now on your crew, and how many could you use if you had every spot full? What would you say?
Oh, hundreds.
Is there a number?
Hundreds.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we definitely have room to grow.
Okay. So plenty of opportunities is what
Yes.
you're telling me. And of course, as things open up, that's where these opportunities are coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And so, very good. And so you've got this big milestone, as we've been talking about. This is the 70th anniversary of the founding of the San Juan Regional Medical Center Auxiliary for the volunteers. And so you've got some things planned later on this year?
We do. Just every quarter, we're trying to do something besides the history. We are doing little gifts, and I brought one for you, but it's just
thanks
a little,
for volunteering.
You know, who doesn't like candy? So that's always a
well
big
then,
one.
yeah, that is
That'll
yeah,
hold you over later.
Let me put this on camera so people can see what we're talking about. But there you go. Thanks for volunteering.
So we're chasing down folks that even if they're not back to the hospital, we're really trying to intentionally connect with them, and we've been trying to do that all along through COVID, even just to make sure everybody's okay, but just to make sure they know they've contributed a lot and are still appreciated.
Right. Now, I have to ask you we have to look at some of those scrapbooks that you brought with you. Would
Sure.
you mind if we just
hand
one over to me and I'll start flipping through and we can talk a little bit about what we've got. So this is between 2006 and 2007.
Mm-hmm.
So not all that long ago.
No, that one's relatively new.
Maybe some of our viewers might say, I wasn't born yet, but okay. But let's take a look at some of these if I can hold it up and show everyone what we're talking about and showing here. But such a great opportunity. Well, that's going to be
show and tell.
Yeah, a little bit like that, but a little bit of reflection on there.
Mm-hmm.
But these are some of the great volunteers who have been at the hospital for a while, right?
Mm-hmm.
And helping to do some of the jobs and some of the office chores and things along that line. Here's, let's see, a van that must have been donated at some point, right?
Yeah, the auxiliary purchased that
Mm-hmm.
van for the hospital, and
I can get that over here.
they use that to pick up patients needing to go to their appointments. So that was a big bonus. That's part of the reason the auxiliary is here, to do fundraising, and that's what our gift market is all about. And they provide equipment and stuff like the van for the hospital, and then educational assistance as well.
Right. That's a great reminder too, because that is some of the way that you're able to raise money to support the hospital, and then able to purchase some of these things maybe that the hospital needs some help purchasing for patients and staff and doctors and things like that. Right. And so that's an important thing. And I think people might be surprised that gift market does bring in, that all those dollars add up over the years, right? And then you have a pretty nice chunk of change to be able to use to buy some of these things, because we know medical equipment's not cheap.
Definitely not cheap. Our most recent purchase was the sofa beds for the pediatric unit, yet to come, the remodel. But we have kind of got a jump start on paying that out, and we're purchasing 12 beds for them, but that total is $54,000, and they're multi-purpose sofa beds. They turn into beds, kind of like the campers and stuff. There's tables that pop out and turns into beds and recliners. Nice. It's pretty slick.
That's pretty cool. And the idea, and we've talked about the remodeling of the pediatric floor, right? And what our plan for that, and the whole idea is, I guess, maybe a parent can stay in the room. Is that, and if necessary, that's kind of the idea, to have a sofa bed contraption in the room. They can already stay. It's just not the most comfortable. Yes, it's not the most comfortable environment. I feel really bad for them. So that can't come soon enough. Right. A big difference for the pediatric wing of the hospital. So we're looking forward to that. It's going to be awesome. That'll be very exciting. You've got another scrapbook open, and so this is a little bit more. Put a plug in for our pet therapy. Oh yeah, let's look at that. Here we go. Let me see if I can show this a little bit better. They've started coming back, and they're focused on visiting staff right now, which is awesome, because our staff really need some TLC, and that has been a big hit. We just love the dogs and the dogs' parents. Right. So they do great service. They do a wonderful job. And this one's not dated, but it's more recent, maybe? Yes. Than the other one? This one was 1996, I believe. Oh, okay. Oh, sorry, 2016. Okay.
had a 6 in there.
Yeah, there you go.
Close.
That's right. Very
I'm
good.
in a time warp.
But how fun to go through these, right? And
Yes.
And see some of these again, as you mentioned, some of your student, maybe teen volunteers who are now employees at the hospital, and I'm sure they love to be embarrassed by those old photos and things like that.
Yeah,
that
we're gonna definitely take advantage of those. Bonnie Higgins is one that
you're on notice,
came
Bonnie.
to mind.
Okay.
She was a teen volunteer. Now she's our manager of the pediatric unit. So,
See?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
very
so
exciting.
So you put these on Facebook for maximum embarrassment potential? Is that the plan?
We'll negotiate.
Okay. All right. See what you get. Very good. Well, Teresa, I always appreciate you coming in and sharing all the great stories of the volunteer crew at the hospital, the auxiliary, and again, this really long, storied history of 70 years. Congratulations to
Thank you.
everyone who's been in part of the auxiliary. I mean, it's a lot of names, a lot of people. If you went through the whole list, I know.
Yes.
It's amazing, and all the things that they've contributed over those years too. So that's wonderful.
We're proud of them.
You bet. Thank you for coming in this morning.
Thank you for having me.
You bet. Great to see you. That's